This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include former Representative Gene Arnold from the County of Nash, Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch, Syndicated columnist and author John Hood, and former state senator and chair of the State Board of Education, Howard Lee. Well, this week's show is going to be interesting as we continue the ongoing debate about House Bill 2, the so-called bathroom bill. We'll also look at the April 18th tax deadline in our state economy and ask our panel whether we need two or more political parties. Plus, as always, we ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Let's get with it. It's been some time since an issue has so dominated the news cycle like the so-called bathroom bill. And it's an issue that has legs. But who's fueling this controversy and what's the fallout from HB 2? We want our panel to share their views on this continuing and highly volatile debate. I'm going to ask each of you, who do you think is fueling this heated issue? Some believe liberal pressure groups and a liberal media stoking the fires. Others say it's just a pushback to a deliberate discrimination against certain groups. Howard, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Well, I think that both sides seem to be exaggerating the issue, and I think obviously each side is pandering to their supporters. But what's new in politics? We all do that. A more serious concern for me, however, is the way in which the legislature approached this legislation. Calling a special session, not having an opportunity for public or to hear from the public, and of course adding other items in the bill that I think threaten local control. And while I recognize the legislature has the power over what locals can do, I wish that they had taken a more deliberate approach to this, because by doing it in this fashion, they've increased huge pressure on the business community and on businesses.
John, what do you say?
Well, again,
who's fueling this?
Well, there is a lot of interest from a lot of different groups. I think the media likes a big story. There are groups that feel passionately about it on both sides. The string of business announcements is not spontaneous. These are not people who woke up one morning, read about North Carolina's law in their local paper, decided to do something about it. These are orchestrated attempts. Now, I'm not suggesting there's anything nefarious about an orchestrated lobbying campaign, because people do that, but this has been done in many states that deal with a variety of religious liberty laws or even back in the same-sex marriage debate. These are orchestrated attempts to try to pressure North Carolina to change the law. And I agree with Howard that the ticking clock that the legislature cited had to do with the bathroom matter by itself that needed to be acted on, they argued, before April 1st. The other items in the bill, whatever you think of them, could have been addressed during regular session. That's what Governor McCrory had originally thought, and that probably would have ended up in a better place. And by the way, I think that's where we're going. I think that when we get into the regular short session of the General Assembly, some of the items will be discussed and maybe some additional action taken.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think this
Who's fueling it?
That's a good question. I think everybody's fueling it because it's a highly controversial. There are people on both sides that are doing what we're supposed to do in our robust political debate. I find it a little curious that people think it's all a left-wing conspiracy when people like the former Bank of America CEO Hugh McCall is saying this is highly inappropriate and bad for Charlotte and bad for North Carolina. The last time I checked, he wasn't a left-wing activist. So I think there is genuine concern about especially business people in North Carolina who are worried about damaging North Carolina's brand. I mean, I think there's genuine concern about discrimination, which is the most important thing. But what's getting the publicity now is people, I think, are worried about North Carolina's brand being damaged, and it has been damaged.
Yeah. Gene, what do you say?
Well, I'm upset with the bill, not so much of the content of the bathroom, and Republicans have historically tried to spend as much time in the bedroom and the bathroom of other people anyway. But there's a provision in the bill that does really bother me. It says an individual cannot sue in civil court and bring any civil action if they feel like they have been discriminated against it. And on what Howard was saying, the attitude of the General Assembly, I think is best portrayed by the comments of my Senator Buck Newton from Wilson when he said, we're going to stop talking with these political correctness mobs, and we're going to put an end to this nonsense once and for all. You know, these are actions that are going to affect people. They have affected the state. They have affected business. And I think they ought to graciously back away.
Howard, you've been a mayor as well as a state senator. Many suggest that Charlotte City Council, which is dominated by Democrats, was really pandering to their base. You mentioned the word pandering in your first response. The legislature was doing exactly the same thing to their base. Is this just really politics? Is that what this is all about, more than it is the main issue, the bathroom issue particularly?
Well, I think when we look across the country, we see a number of states and certainly multiple communities that have enacted similar legislation. And I believe that Charlotte, of course, was getting quite a bit of pressure from its constituencies to take a look at making this available. I really, on the other hand, think that the Charlotte legislation should have been left in place, and we would have been smart to see how the outcome moved forward and then made decisions on whether or not that was an appropriate.
John, one question I wanted to ask you is, what do you think of Attorney General Roy Cooper's proclamation that he will not defend this bill in the courts? As the state's Attorney General, that's his job, isn't it?
It is. I think this is one of a series of instances where the Attorney General says, I can't defend the state, or I can't defend a state official, I can't defend a state law. Now, I'm not arguing that every one of the cases that he declined were cases that were winnable. And that was one of his arguments that's a little bit better, is I'm not going to take the state's resources and defend an unwinnable case. He didn't really make a very good argument about it in this case, though. And I think it actually illustrates why we need to rethink having a separately elected Attorney General that's supposedly the lawyer for the state, for the governor, when he's not really their lawyer. He's not going to work for them. He's not going to defend the actions that they take. I think that's a real problem.
Chris, I was going to ask you, there are at least 2 lawsuits in front of the courts right now that deal with discrimination. Is it possible that one or both of these lawsuits might have some impact on this bill?
Oh, I do. I definitely think at least one of these lawsuits will have an impact. I think it'll be a while. You know, it's going to go to federal court. It's going to go to probably the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals. It may go to the Supreme Court, as other states or other similar laws that are in those courts. I do think it will do that. I think it's really important, though, for viewers to know we talk about the so-called bathroom bill. We talk about bathrooms. As Gene pointed out, this bill goes way beyond bathrooms. Yes. And that's what is so interesting to me. The other side, the supporters of this bill, all they want to talk about is bathrooms. This not only limits the right to sue in state court if you're fired because you're African American or a woman or pregnant or Jewish or Christian. It overrides all local ordinances that have to do with living wages. It actually allows the communities to discriminate. This is a huge deal, and that's why they're getting so much pushback. They vastly overreached.
Back to the issue of this being politics, Gene. What I'm hearing from both sides is that it's energizing their bases, and that they're expecting this to have some positive impact for their particular candidacies, whatever they may happen to be, come November 8th. Do you think that's true?
No.
Is it really energizing their bases?
No, I don't believe it's energizing anybody's basis but the Tea Party. I think Cooper's mistake was a political mistake. He should have said, okay, I'll represent the state, because it's not going to happen until after the elections anyway. And to your point, the court has already ruled in Virginia that could have some impact on us too. 20 years ago, when you mentioned Colorado before, Justice Kennedy said you cannot use animosity toward a group to file legislation or create legislation, and this is exactly what they've been doing.
John indicated he thinks that the legislation may solve this problem, or at least partially solve this problem, when they come back into session in 2 weeks on April 25th. Anybody disagree with that? You think there will be some motion on this?
There might be, but Senator Berger's office was pretty clear. When Governor McCrory said he was open to changes in the law, and they asked Senator Berger, and he said, we're not changing it. So he's going to have a change of heart or figure out another way to do it if that's going to happen.
Even with all these businesses saying, like PayPal saying this past week it's not coming to Charlotte, and NCAA saying that they might
I think the legislature's dug in. I don't believe that it's going to move. It's sort of like being frozen in ice until springtime comes. I don't think there'll be any movement.
It depends on what we mean. There are a variety, as Chris says, there are a number of different provisions. Will they change the bathroom part of it? Probably not substantially, but there are lots of other things that are implicated and actions the state and local governments can take within the law that would involve anti-discrimination policies.
Tom, I think it's going to be a continued assault on local government. This General Assembly does not want local government to do anything. And they're virtually stripping them of power.
All right. Well, we thank you for watching NC Spin, either on the air or on YouTube. Here's a reminder, there's much more on our website, ncspin.com, or NC Spin on Facebook. You'll find video footage not seen anywhere else, perspective pieces from our panel, and my weekly column. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com, NCSpin on Facebook, or at NCSpin on Twitter, at NCSpin Tweets. After we take a break, we're going to come back and talk about tax time and the state economy.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Baseball players from other countries are considered guest workers here. Baseball, the previous administration and Congress cut a deal in 2006 allowing foreign players to travel freely across the country. Not so for agriculture guest workers. They're vilified for doing work Americans won't, and they face a mountain of red tape just to get here. Shouldn't American agriculture get the same consideration as baseball? Farm Bureau and Agriculture, we keep North Carolina growing.
1 in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. It's time to invest in the Healthy Corner Store initiative. Visit ncallianceforhealth.org to learn more.
We now return to NC Spin.
The deadline for filing income taxes is April 18th. State leaders are anxious to learn if there's going to be an April surprise of greater tax revenues than had been projected, and at least in some measure will be a snapshot of how our economy is performing. Chris, we all know in past years we've had this big April surprise. The state, however, has shifted its tax policy away from income taxes toward more sales taxes. Could this lessen the financial impact of the April surprise?
Well, it could. I still think we're going to get a significant amount of income from personal income taxes. We, thank goodness, haven't eliminated the personal income tax yet. So I think it's still a big arbiter about how the final revenue figures are going to shake out. I was interested that the governor's office, in the middle of the House Bill 2, the bill we just talked about, the controversy, put out the projections at the end of March to saying that the state revenue was going to have a surplus, which I thought was interesting because that's pretty rare, because in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, we get the April number. So clearly he was trying to get some good publicity for that. That number is almost meaningless. The real number, as we've said on the show many times, will come a few days after April. Well, the end of April, after the April 18th deadline. It is still a big day to find out how our revenues are doing.
Gene, I guess the question is, does this surplus in the state treasury signal better economic times in our state?
Well, North Carolina historically lags about 2 years behind the federal or the United States economy, and that economy is gradually improving. I don't think it's the greatest in the world. I feel like I'm the only one in April that gets a surprise on tax day, but I'm ready for someone else to take a piece of it.
Share the surprise. John, you wrote a column a week or so ago that I thought was very instructive, in which you said North Carolina's economy was improving at a brisk pace. Explain what you think, why you think that's the case.
Well, very simply, if you look at almost every standard measure of the economy, North Carolina has been outperforming the national and southeastern averages by an average of between 10 and 20%. Job growth, income growth, average weekly wage growth, a variety of different GDP. And that is reflected in the fiscal numbers that you were talking about. If you look at how North Carolina's state budget is faring, sales taxes are actually not up very much this year. It's income taxes. They're up by double digits. That's because more people are working, more people are earning incomes, more people are receiving income and being
paying
taxed
taxes.
on it. So the basic bottom line here is that the state budget so far, through the numbers we have right now, revenues are up about 6% over last year. expenditures are up less than 1% over last year. That's a recipe for a surplus.
Howard, one of the facts that is sort of inescapable when you drill down in these numbers is that there is an increasing gap between urban and rural counties. I know that as a legislator, you dealt with that issue for many years. Nobody seems to have come up with any solution to that problem. Is there any positive news for these rural counties, you think?
Well, I don't see much on the horizon right now. I certainly feel that there's an area we need to give more serious attention to, but we've been doing it through the years and still haven't come up with the right formula to make a change there. But urban counties seem to be doing extremely well. I think we've got to find a way to share the wealth somehow with these rural counties, either through supporting institutions like the schools or taking some of the burden off the local communities in hopes that they can find ways to help shore up the gaps between that.
Chris, your website, NC Policy Watch, ran an article from the NC Budget and Tax Center recently in which it was saying that there's a paucity, as they said, of good paying jobs, living wage jobs. The middle class continues shrinking. The gap between the wealthiest 1% and virtually everybody else continues to grow. They deny that there's a Carolina comeback. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that the news of a Carolina comeback is grossly exaggerated in many parts of North Carolina. I think it's. I think that report found 79 counties are still more jobs. There are more people looking for jobs.
63 counties are below the poverty level.
Well, right. The child poverty rate in some, or poverty rate in some of those counties is above 40%. So clearly, we need to figure out some economic policies to help people in rural North Carolina. And it is important to note, and John's column did point this out too. A lot of what's happening in North Carolina, the national economy has improved. And just like North Carolina's economy, there are winners and losers in that improvement. There are people who aren't doing very well, and we better figure out how to help them, particularly at the lower end of the economic ladder.
Yeah, one of the things you said, John, was that the state has created 252,000 new jobs since June of 2013, which outpaces the federal government.
Yes.
So far as the percentage of job growth, our 6.2% growth compared to the federal 5.1%. But you also said the GDP was outpacing the national economy, and per person income is outpacing the national economy.
Yeah, that's true. Now, again, we can't conclude with any hard evidence what has caused this. There are a variety of theories as to why this could be true, but the fact that North Carolina's economy is doing better than the nation and better than the Southeast average is just a fact. It doesn't tell you necessarily what your conclusion should be from that fact, but it is a fact.
All right, after these messages, we're going to ask 2 parties, 3 parties, 4, or more.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
I help educate and inspire visually impaired students to strive for a brighter future.
I make sure visitors to the North Carolina Zoo take a walk on the wild side.
And I make sure that the fuel you buy is a quality product from pipeline to pump.
I support small businesses in North Carolina by matching them with hard-working, well-trained employees.
I make sure the roads you drive on are safe.
Scenic, the one voice speaking in support of the men and women who are making North Carolina great.
It's a fact, patients who receive care in the medical home from a trusted family physician reduce healthcare costs through prevention, early detection, and affordable management of high-cost chronic diseases.
Every dollar invested in healthcare matters. Let's invest them wisely, building on North Carolina's medical home model. Better health begins with a medical home, a trusted family physician, the best return on our healthcare investment. Learn about the importance of medical homes at OurNCHealthcare.com.
1 in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. It's time to invest in the Healthy Corner Store initiative. Visit ncallianceforhealth.org to learn more.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, "Come on, we're leaving."
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
You know, we don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
We now return to NC Spin.
The presidential primary elections dominate the political news, with Wisconsin's vote taking place last week. In the coming weeks, big states like New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut voting. The big focus has been on delegate counts, but it's obvious there are some real schisms within both of the parties, leading some to speculate whether we need to have more than two political parties. Gene, some are saying that if either Donald Trump or Ted Cruz wins the nomination, it's going to signal the demise of the GOP as we've known it. Is it time to have more than two political parties in our nation, or how about in North Carolina?
I think, Tom, that we already have a three-party system, and with the rise in the registration of the independents and the decrease in Democrats and Republicans. In addition to that, North Carolina has always been a split-ticket voting state, so there's no real sticking with a particular party. So I think it's there. I don't believe we need to add any more grief to the number of people running.
At one time, Howard, it was a great benefit for a candidate to be the standard bearer of a particular party because, along with other things, they got funding from the party, they got assistance with grassroots support out in the various counties in the state, and also such things as mailing and messaging and direct mail and that kind of stuff. But none of the political parties have the kind of influence that they used to have 20, 30, 40 years ago. So what's the great benefit of a candidate belonging to a party?
Well, I think in some cases it's nice to have some identification, but it's certainly not necessary. I think the influence of the political party went away when we introduced primaries. There was a time when we both know that the best candidates, if we can say they were the best candidates, were chosen in the back room. And of course, once that choice was made, there was some control by the party over that candidate and keeping that candidate in line. That's not the case anymore. So I think we're living in a time now where we don't need to put too much emphasis on that.
One of the great drawbacks to establishing a new political party, if you wanted to do it, is ballot access. North Carolina has some of the strictest ballot access laws in the nation. Do we need to re-examine that, John?
I think we should. I think it should be easier to get on the ballot as an unaffiliated candidate or a party other than the two largest political parties be able to get on the ballot. I don't think that is going to lead to a multi-party European-style political system in our state or any other American state because of the uniqueness of how we're set up. I think if you had one of the two major political parties go into a tailspin or break up, you would just have a different second party or some kind of reconstitution.
Like the Whigs became the Republicans?
Basically, yeah. I think that's the process.
You agree with that, Chris? Are we not going to see any new political parties?
I think it's unlikely. I also agree that our ballot access laws are far too strict and that we need people to be able to get on the ballot and voters need more choices. I think one thing we haven't talked about, the demise of the parties. It used to be the parties were the only vehicle where very wealthy people could give large sums of money and then it would end up in campaigns. That they had unlimited contributions to a party, the party had unlimited contributions to individual candidates. Now we have all these other vehicles, whether you like them or not. I think it's a little scary because a lot of them are secret and we don't know where the money's coming from. But if you want to really influence politics now and you have a lot of money, you don't have to give it to a political party. And that's one of the reasons I think they're diminishing. Or a C4 or 527 or all these other groups.
All right, after these messages, we're going to ask the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
Baseball players from other countries are considered guest workers here. Baseball, the previous administration and Congress cut a deal in 2006 allowing foreign players to travel freely across the country. Not so for agriculture guest workers. They're vilified for doing work Americans won't, and they face a mountain of red tape just to get here. Shouldn't American agriculture get the same consideration as baseball? Farm Bureau and Agriculture, we keep North Carolina growing.
We now return to NC Spin.
Well, one of our favorite parts of the show, and you tell us the same, is we ask our panel to tell us something they don't know. They get to choose the subject, and they talk about it for a few seconds. Gene Arnold, I'll start with you.
Well, I hope you do know about this, but the Public School Forum is honoring former Governor Jim Martin on May the 19th with the J. Robinson Award for his contributions to education. And it's going to be held at the Raleigh Civic Center.
And they're also going to honor John Dornan and Joanne Norris.
That is correct.
Three very worthy candidates. You served as chairman of that organization for a long time.
I did, and I'm still past chairman.
Well, good. It's a great organization. Chris, tell us something we don't know.
Well, sort of lost in all the hubbub of House Bill 2, the discrimination bill, was Governor McCrory's proposal to raise teacher pay, and his education proposals came out the significant raise in teacher pay, $5,000, a $2,500 bonus for veteran teachers. It gets us on the right track. We're still going to be far behind. So I was interested that didn't get much attention. And I think we need to be talking about that a lot and where it puts us in the rankings.
Not only did it not get much attention, it got negative attention from the House Speaker.
Well, and it also, some Senate leaders, I forgot my point, but the Senate leader said they're more in line to give 2 or 3% this session, so that's going to be the big battle.
Yeah, John, tell us something we don't know.
We talked earlier about the budget surplus, revenue surplus that's likely for the coming year, and it's true that the short-term budget prospects are good, but it's important to note we have some unfunded liabilities in state government. The biggest one is retiree health benefits for teachers and state employees. We have promised benefits that are worth about $27 billion more than we have money saved, which is zero. So the health plan deserves significant and ongoing attention because in the long run, it's kaput.
Yeah. Howard Lee, tell us something we don't know.
Well, I think talking about Senate Bill 2, House Bill 2, there's a small bakery in Durham that had 2 employees walk out because the owner did not want to post a sign on the bathrooms saying unisex bathrooms. That's the kind of pressure I think many small businesses are going to experience as we go forward if we don't do something to lessen the pressure with these businesses. And I'm getting the sense that it may even spread to other small businesses as well.
Which again speaks to the point that John was making of why some of these businesses are reacting and responding perhaps maybe the way they are.
But businesses have no mandates under this bill. They don't have to do anything about their bathrooms at all.
Oh,
so it's confusion if people think the bill makes private businesses do anything.
And don't you think there's a tremendous amount of confusion about HB2?
There
Absolutely.
Is.
There's no question about it.
Yes.
And it's all anybody wants to talk about it. Wherever you go, I mean, that's the one question that I constantly get when I'm speaking or out in public.
And maybe if the General Assembly had taken this up in the normal course of events and had testimony and talked a lot about it, a lot of the confusion wouldn't exist. Instead of 9 hours and McCrory signing the bill at the same night.
All right. Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback and read my weekly column. Be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. And join us next week when we'll have more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.